Attorney General Pam Bondi's appearance before Congress promised to be anything but ordinary. What was meant to be a straightforward testimony quickly devolved into a public spectacle, as Bondi found herself tangled in a web of questions about corruption, ethics violations, and her involvement in some of the most controversial moments of the Trump administration. The pressure mounted, and her inability to respond with clarity or composure revealed more than just ethical lapses. It exposed a level of dysfunction and dishonesty that many believed to be a hallmark of Trump's cabinet. The moment Bondi entered the spotlight, it was clear she was in over her head.
Are involved in that. The FBI was involved. Our U.S. attorneys are involved. Many of these are district to district. So the way we're doing that is, I will tell you, my National Security Division is involved in all of those and assisting in those. We meet every single morning and we discuss that. But many of those, Minnesota, will be handled in the state in which it happened. Another one is Governor. I'm sorry if I can keep going. I'm sorry.
Sure.
I don't mean
Quickly,
to.
though.
I filibuster. Governor Shapiro and what happened in Pennsylvania with Governor Shapiro. I've spoken to Governor Shapiro. We are working hand in hand, our U.S. attorney with the district attorney there, hand in hand, just like in Minnesota. I made sure our U.S. attorney and our district attorneys there were working hand in hand. Political party doesn't matter when something like this happens. And I also want to make sure all members of Congress are safe as well.
Okay, and I would reiterate, Chairman Stile and I think Chairman Stile and I agree that at least a part-time in each of the 94 districts would be appropriate. Let me change topics for just a moment.
I'm really quick on that. Yes, we're doing that through our National Security Division, so I think that's already in the works, and I would be glad to meet with you in a secure facility to talk about that.
Very good, thank you. Continuing, in addition to my role here, the committee that I serve on as an authorizer oversees Capitol security as well as federal elections, so I'm closely following the aftermath of January 6th. Recently, several defendants who received presidential pardons related to that day are now arguing in court that the pardon covers crimes like, for instance, illegal firearm possession discovered in a search of an individual's home in California months after January 6th. What's your position on whether the pardons cover these separate offenses?
The pardon power rests with the president, not the Department of Justice, and some of that is pending litigation, and I cannot discuss pending litigation.
Well, I'm not asking you about who has the right to a pardon. I think as the Department of Justice in February wrote, the pardon is an act of grace which removes the punishment from a crime a person has committed. It further said, in its effect, the granting of a pardon is in no sense the overturning of a judgment of conviction. It is an executive action that mitigates or sets aside punishment. So as the chief law enforcement officer, what's your opinion, not the president's power of whether he can offer a pardon? That's pretty clear in the Constitution. But for crimes committed unrelated to January 6th, would you suggest that the pardons would cover activities or crimes potentially committed outside of that by the same person?
Well, I don't know if you're referring to Joe Biden pardoning his son after he said he would not pardon Hunter Biden, or the
No, I actually
commutation
referred
of
to
all
January 6th. I'm sorry.
all the sentences that the people that were on death row. I've met with those families.
No,
all of those sentences were commuted. I'm not going to comment on pardons on either side of the aisle.
So, well, I'm not asking about either side. I'm asking, you're the chief law enforcement officer in the United States. You have a responsibility directly, but you swore an oath to the Constitution, not the president. Want to know what your views are on the extent to which pardons cover potential crimes committed by individuals who've been pardoned but unrelated to January 6th.
Do you mean the ones that were done by the auto pen? I'm not going to discuss
right.
anything that
Mr.
could
Chairman,
be or not be
I
pending litigation.
respectfully, you know, Ms. DeLauro accused you of filibustering. I think that's the height of filibustering. This is a serious, serious topic. And for you to suggest that you don't have an opinion or to divert to other things that have nothing to do with January 6 pardons, I think is frankly demeaning to your responsibilities and your job. With that, I'll yield back.
Congresswoman Malene Dean, a vocal critic of the Trump administration, wasted no time getting to the heart of the matter. I'm going to focus today on corruption, she declared, cutting straight to the point. This wasn't just any typical questioning. It was a laser-focused attack on the ethics of Bondi and others in the Trump administration. Dean's words echoed across the room as she framed the conversation around two types of corruption, personal and governmental. But it was Bondi's defense, or rather her lack of one, that stole the show. When asked about her dealings with Qatar, particularly her role in advocating for anti-human trafficking efforts tied to the World Cup, Bondi stammered and deflected. Hold on," she nervously replied when the topic was raised. It was clear she wasn't prepared for the scrutiny. She struggled to defend her past actions, and in the process it became evident that her involvement with Qatar was far more than just a simple advisory role. Bondi had been registered as a foreign lobbyist, a fact that she reluctantly admitted but attempted to downplay. Her hesitancy in acknowledging her role raised questions about her true motivations and the extent of her ethical lapses. The questions didn't stop there. Dean pressed on, asking Bondi whether she had disclosed her lobbying activities when she was nominated for her Senate confirmation hearing. Bondi, caught in the act of evasion, finally admitted, "No, it was not in your documents." This was a damning admission. She had failed to disclose crucial information during a time when transparency was paramount, but instead of owning up to the mistake, Bondi tried to steer the conversation away from her personal failings and instead focused on unrelated issues. This shift in focus became a pattern throughout the hearing. Bondi's attempts to defend her actions, particularly her involvement with Trump's media venture, were met with skepticism and disbelief. When pressed about her role in advising Trump on accepting a $400 million airplane gift from Qatar, she resorted to the classic excuse of "I can't discuss that and I complied with my ethics." However, her explanations only raised more questions. Bondi's defense seemed less like a legitimate argument and more like an attempt to deflect and avoid addressing the larger ethical issues at play. But it wasn't just the personal ethical concerns that stood at the forefront of this hearing. It was the larger issue of corruption within the Trump administration. Bondi's actions were merely the tip of the iceberg. As Congresswoman Dean pointed out, the Trump administration's track record was rife with corruption, from the concentration of power in the hands of one individual to the blatant disregard for the constitutional checks and balances that the framers had so carefully designed. Bondi's defense didn't just reveal her own failings, it laid bare the moral bankruptcy that plagued the entire administration. This wasn't the first time that Bondi's name had been linked to questionable decisions and questionable ethics. Her ties to Trump's administration were controversial, to say the least. And yet, instead of confronting the accusations head-on, she chose to deflect, avoid, and defy the very essence of accountability. Her performance before Congress revealed just how far the Trump administration was willing to go to protect its interests, even if it meant compromising the very values that were meant to protect the American people. But perhaps the most shocking moment of the hearing came when Bondi was asked about the January 6 pardons. In the wake of the Capitol insurrection, several individuals who had been pardoned by Trump for their roles in the riot began to argue that their pardons should cover other unrelated crimes, including illegal firearms possession and drug offenses. Bondi, however, refused to provide a definitive answer. Instead, she deflected once more, claiming that the issue was still pending litigation and that she couldn't comment on it. But that wasn't enough for Congresswoman Dean, who pressed Bondi for clarity on whether or not the pardons would extend beyond the insurrection. In her evasiveness, Bondi exposed the contradictions within the Trump administration's approach to law and justice. It was clear that for Bondi, the law wasn't a tool for upholding justice, it was a tool to protect those in power. The very idea of pardon power being used as a way to shield individuals from the consequences of their actions was troubling, and Bondi's refusal to address the legal implications only fueled concerns about the abuse of presidential power. The contradictions didn't end there. Bondi, who had once praised President Trump as a visionary leader, was now in the hot seat, unable to defend the very actions that she had once justified. Her refusal to comment on the extent of presidential pardons raised questions about the true motivations behind the pardons, and whether they were being used as political tools rather than acts of grace. Her deflections on the matter only highlighted the dysfunction within the administration and the lengths to which they were willing to go to protect the interests of the powerful. But while Bondi's performance before Congress was a train wreck, there was one individual who stood out in stark contrast to her disarray: Congressman Jaime Rassin. With sharp precision and a commitment to truth, Rassin dismantled the false narratives being pushed by Bondi and her colleagues. He didn't just push back against the corrupt practices of the administration, he actively held them accountable. Rassin's intervention wasn't just a necessary response to the chaos, it was a masterclass in holding power to account. Rassin's role in this battle for accountability couldn't be overstated. As the country continues to grapple with the fallout from the Trump administration, voices like Rassin's are more important than ever. His ability to cut through the noise and expose the truth behind the chaos has made him a crucial figure in the fight to restore integrity to American politics. It's individuals like Rassin who are showing us that standing up against corruption and holding power to account is not just necessary, it's essential. But it's not just about one individual or one administration. The fight for the Constitution and the rule of law is far from over. From the very beginning of Trump's presidency, we've witnessed an ongoing struggle between those who seek to protect democratic values and those who seek to undermine them. This battle is playing out in courtrooms, in Congress, and in the streets, and the stakes have never been higher. As we look ahead, it's clear that the fight for constitutional democracy is far from over. The challenges we face today are not just political, they are existential. Will we continue to allow those in power to trample on the values that have defined our nation, or will we stand up and demand accountability? The answer to that question will determine the future of American democracy. In conclusion, Bondi's testimony was a powerful reminder of the deep flaws within the Trump administration and the lengths to which some individuals are willing to go to protect their own interests. But it was also a call to action. The fight for accountability, transparency, and justice is far from over, and it's up to all of us to keep pushing forward. If you believe in the mission of truth and integrity, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up if you believe that those in power should be held accountable for their actions, and if you've stayed with me to the end, drop a blue heart in the comments to show your support. For more in-depth analysis, don't forget to check out my new Substack. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and I'll see you soon.